I know that, like, as most of you are here because you are ready to get involved and do something this November, and rallying your squad is where it is at. So I don't think I have to tell you all what is at stake. But we also know that the opposition has laid out an pretty extremist agenda, 900 pages of what they are planning to do. And I know that a lot of our friends might roll their eyes and say we're being hyperbolic, but that's what they said about Roe versus Wade too. So I think it's really important we understand, so that when we can have these conversations with friends, that we can tell them that, we are looking at the loss of reproductive rights, not just abortion access, but also birth control and IVF. They are looking to end public education because it's the great equalizer in our society. We know that policies that will be enacted will actually promote discrimination, racial discrimination, housing discrimination, discrimination against LGBTQ plus members of our family and our friends. We won't see action on climate change. There will be nothing done on gun violence. And the goal is to impose Christian nationalism upon the country and move us toward autocracy. So how do we combat this? But how do we win elections and get the right people into office? Is with relational organizing. And that sounds fancy, but it's not. It is just the concept that friends talking to friends is way more effective than strangers talking to strangers. So people can knock on your door or send those texts. We're not opening them. We're getting rid of all the text messages that are coming in. It is hard to break through. You know who breaks through? You do. When you text your friends, they actually respond, or you drop something in your group chat, or you give your friend a call on the phone. They will actually take your call and they will actually have a conversation with you. So you can break through. And you're going to also see from the data that we are trusted. We are the people that our friends and family turn to for information about elections. I have 3 text messages today about issue 1 in Ohio because early voting started here. And I was able to tell them things that they did not know. And I now feel pretty confident they are going to vote yes on that issue, because the messenger truly matters. And there is all kinds of data behind this, but this was a YouGov poll that was done about who Americans trust for accurate information about elections. And by far, as you can see, friends and family were at the top of that list. What was at the bottom? Political campaigns and social media. So it is so, so important because we are the people that can make a difference. And we don't have to just rely on other people's data. I want to give you what we actually have done at Red, Wine, and Blue. So I'm going to give a little context. Presidential elections spend millions and millions of dollars just trying to move voter turnout by 1% or even less, because that is what wins elections. Margins in races are so tight, not just at the presidential level, but come on, school boards, state houses. We win these sometimes by like a seat or by a vote, by a couple of votes. So last cycle in our Rally Your Squad program, our volunteers got involved. They reached out to their family and friends, and we didn't raise voter turnout by 1% or even 2%. We saw it go over 10%, which is a crazy high number. People can't believe it. That's the power of relational organizing. And for those of you who say all of your friends are doing this and they're voting, they're not. Our own volunteers, we saw an over 7% increase in their voter turnout. And the thing with relational is that we reach people across the aisle. We reach unaffiliated and Republican voters. We brought over 20% of the people we actually contacted last cycle fit those categories, because some of our friends are from our kids' soccer team or in our book club, or they're our neighbors, and they're not necessarily our friends because of politics. And so we can have conversations with them. These are people that no campaign may ever knock on their door because they don't look like the voter they should contact in the voting file. I have a friend like this. I know she's a registered Republican. I also know that she is really mad about reproductive freedom. And she now has a child who has come out as being part of the LGBTQ plus community. I know things the voter file doesn't, so I can have really effective conversations. So we are really, really thrilled to have both Diane Raphael and Jessica St. Clair here with us tonight. They are comedians, they are podcast hosts, they are authors and actresses with appearances in movies, TV shows, theater, so busy ladies. And I believe you both got started in the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater in New York. So I'm assuming you might have met there even, but you can share about that. So Diane has starred in TV comedy programs, Burning Love, Players, Adult Swims, and I looked up what this all was, NTSF, SD, SUV. I know it's something with...
Wow, these credits are such a deep cut, Julie. I love it. These are for like real fans. Everybody else is like, I've never seen her in anything.
Okay,
I
well,
love
Grace
them.
and Frankie, because we
Okay,
all,
that's yes.
Brianna is one of the best characters I've ever seen written. I loved it so much.
You.
But she's also been on a lot of other shows, Party Down, Happy Endings, New Girl, Lady Dynamite, and film roles in Year One, Unfinished Business, Long Shot Blockers, and you had a Sundance film 2013, which I think sounds hilarious, Ass Backwards,
That's
which
right.
you co-wrote and starred in. And you are on two podcasts. So one with Jessica here, which is called The Deep Dive. Hilarious, everybody, you should listen. And then another one called How Did This Get Made? And then I'm also wanted to welcome Jessica, who co-created and co-starred in NBC's Best Friends Forever and Playing House. She is currently the lead voice on the animated comedy Royal Crackers. And she's been on a lot of different shows, including Veep, Weeds, The McCarthys, Marry Me, American Housewife. Loved that character too, by the way. Worst Week and United States of Terra. And then she's been in Bridesmaids, She's Out of My League, Afternoon Delight, and Enough Said. So, and we're going to talk about this later, but you've also both written books. So a lot going on there. But let me start by saying thank you both for joining us today. And then, a lot of people on this call and a lot of women in the red, wine, and blue community are fairly new to politics. So can you share with us, like, what got you motivated to get involved and how long have you been involved in this work?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Julie, for all of the incredible organization and for doing this. This is so inspiring to see everyone here. And I also just want to say that one thing we really do know about women in general is how many hats we wear, how much labor we do that is unseen and invisible, how much of the world we are constantly holding up. And so to see so many women also showing up to give of themselves right now in this moment for our daughters, our granddaughters, is so beautiful and powerful. And I just want to say thank you all for being here. So I was actually thinking about this question. The first time I was ever politically active was when, although I grew up with a father who wrote letters to everyone. And so if he didn't like something, he was going to write a letter and he was going to have his voice heard. So I did grow up with that sort of that sentiment of like, well, politicians actually work for us and we are their bosses. And so they are not these cults of personality. They are our employees who we pay for with our tax dollars. And so I had sort of that civic education in mind always. But when I was in high school, I was a part of the Young Democrats Club in high school. And I canvassed for the first time for Caroline McCarthy, who was running for Congress after the 1993 Long Island train shooting, in which she lost her husband. And she was really one of the first big gun control, gun reform advocates. And I went door to door as I think maybe a sophomore or junior in college, junior in high school, and talked to people and handed literature out. And I think once you do it, and you described it so well, Julie, but make that connection, I think women in particular are primed to do that in ways that can be more effective. And it was a profound experience of being able to really talk about something that was scary to me. I was on the Long Island Railroad all the time, and to talk about why I thought she should, win this race. So that was the first time I ever became politically active and started from there.
That's amazing. Jessica, how about you?
Well, I have to say, I really tip my hat to June because she is so politically active. And so everything that I've gotten involved in has been because of June. So I'm newer to the game. I'm most like people who are new to your organization. I'm learning alongside. I think the one thing that got me interested was when I was writing this book on small talk and how to do it. We ended up having quite a big focus on how you can talk and communicate with people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum of politics. So, and we started it just as how to get through Thanksgiving dinner without wanting to kill each other. And we had thought that there was a sort of don't ask, don't tell. We're not going to ever talk about politics ever with our loved ones. And sometimes that's necessary. But then what we realized is in small talking with not necessarily strangers, although that can happen, but with who you're talking about, the soccer mom a lot of political talk happens at pickup, and drop off. And what we realized is actually you can have a conversation with someone who is on the opposite side of you, and you can find through small talk that you're much closer as a result. And also communicating information in a kind of tossed off casual way is kind of an art you can learn. Different tips and tricks for how to like bring that up in a casual way where you're almost testing the waters. And then if you see that they might be a little bit open to it, then you can go deeper. So that's been sort of my interest, is how do I do that in my day-to-day?
I love that, because we talk all the time when we're doing trainings is about finding common ground. And so we're going to circle back and talk a little bit about your book and get your best tips as the author, how to do that and start those conversations. But I'll kick it over to Julie. I think she's got the next question.
Well, somebody put in the chat, friend leading friend to activism. And I love that, because I wasn't elected and now my two best friends are elected.
Love it.
So we've got a fun question here. We're so excited to have you both here, and excited that so many celebrities are willing to step up and help get folks involved in this election. You both have worked on some very popular shows with great cast, talented casts. Can you share a memorable moment from your work? A moment that you absolutely will
Actually,
not
Julie,
forget?
hey, Julie, I'm sorry. I think I skipped ahead on something. So I'm going to circle back on something else.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I think I gave you an old version. So I just want to ask you this question. So Diane, this is for you. So you, like I said, Grace and Frankie was an amazing show, and you got to work with legends, Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda. So, but they are both very strong political activists. Like we see them I think I just got a text from Jane Fonda not long ago.
Emails,
so can you tell me, what lessons you took away from your time working with them, hearing about what they've been doing, like basically their life around political activism?
So much that it's really hard to distill, but I think that the main thing that I'm walking away from that experience with, and I'm still very close to both of them, so I can't count Jane as a real mentor in this space in particular, but she has been spending her privilege forever, really. She has never not been, she's never held on to her power. She's never gatekept her privilege and knowledge. She is constantly offering of herself. And I think sometimes the conversation around like celebrities, and thank you for calling me one, obviously, but it is like, well, how dare they speak on these issues? And to that I say, and I think Jane and Lily would probably say, although I don't dare speak for them, but we have children, we have our own bodies. And especially on the issue of reproductive freedom, it's really quite disturbing what's happening. And I love what you said earlier, Julie, about how to talk to people about like who call you alarmist when you say they're coming for this next and they're coming for that next. And because the truth is they did send us back. And I think about Jane and Lily and all of the women who sacrificed so much for that right. And so to see Roe overturned, this is my body, and I have absolutely every right to speak about this issue and many more issues. I have children who will live in this world. And so I feel that real sense of urgency that I think Jane and Lily share, which is, it's not a matter of like, can you do this? It's actually, how could you not? How could you continue on without doing this for your children and your grandchildren? And how could you like just go day to day and not feel, because I think Jane said this to me once, which is like the only antidote to despair about climate. I mean, we're all watching what's happening with Milton. Like the only antidote to despair is activism, is showing up and doing something. And she said that to me when Trump was elected, and it has remained true in a guiding light, that feeling of hopelessness. And some people really get stuck in it, and there's a lot of apathy, and it is the thing that gets us out of that and makes us feel joy and hope. community and being in community. So that's the main thing I've taken away, that it is the antidote and it is the motivator.
Absolutely. I tell people with the Rally Your Squad program, you know, if you're doom scrolling, then get on our program and start talking to your
Absolutely.
friend. So, and I know you
Absolutely
guys
true.
talk a lot. So, but Julie, I'm sorry. Next question. Will.
That's okay. So Jessica, how about you in terms of strong women that you've worked with and lessons that you've learned?
Well, I was so grateful to meet Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I was on VEEP for a couple episodes, but I also did this tiny role in this movie where she had to massage my feet for like 45 minutes, which is terrible. I'd forgotten to get a pedicure. But she has been such an inspiration to me because Julia has done everything. Like in her career, she's done it all. Everything she touches turns to gold. She could just go to Santa Barbara and live out her days, you know, enjoying herself, which, you know, let's face it, most of us would probably choose. But she has chosen to really get involved in climate change, especially. And I think what I've learned from her is she really specifies. Like she could just be out there talking about all of it, but she's really chosen something narrow to kind of be her thing. And so I think if we can choose that one thing that we are actually really passionate about, we'll possibly be more effective than just coming at it like a poo-poo platter of issues. So I really applaud her, first of all, for just not enjoying herself and taking it easy, which she absolutely has earned the right to do, but also just to be specific about what you'd like to get across. Because you might only have, I don't know, 60 seconds really in that interaction to kind of move the needle with somebody. So yeah.
That's the perfect segue into our next question.
Mhm.
So, and you've mentioned reproductive rights, you know, and standing up for our bodies and our daughters and everything. But what are the issues that are top of mind for both of you? So, you know, the things that you're talking to friends and family about, the things that you are wanting to scream from the rooftop on the podcast, or, you know, when you're doing these appearances, like what are the issues that are really, really top of mind for you at this election?
Yeah, and I'll talk about abortion again, because I mean there's so many, right? There's the climate, there's abortion, there's guns, and just common sense gun reform, which like overwhelmingly people support, and yet we can't seem to get it through. So there's that issue in particular is just like mind-numbingly dumb to me, of just how many people, I mean, the same as you could say is true for abortion, but just especially with guns, like how many people actually feel that much more needs to be done, who are gun owners and NRA members. So there's just like there's overwhelming data to prove that this just needs to change, and there's such a strong will for it to change. But I think the abortion to me is so deeply troubling because it's so determining of a woman's future, that right, that fundamental right to decide when she becomes a parent. It is I mean, there's been so many studies on it just being that the defining factor on our economic success, the success of our children, um, we can't talk about wanting more women to run for office, wanting more women to be in C-suite level roles, wanting more women to run the world, and not guarantee that every woman in this country can determine, her reproductive outcomes. That's just, you can't have both, right? So, and to me, it really does make women state-owned property at the end of the day, and that is so deeply disturbing to me that I can't, and you hear stories about women traveling, women dying, women trying to, dealing with, and it's just like, it's so horrifying to me that, and I think that the Republicans have made such a grave error. And I believe that women are about to prove that. And there's been a major miscalculation here. And so I'm really hopeful and I'm really excited and I'm really angry. And I feel that that is true for so many women overwhelmingly right now. And so I'm just really hopeful that it's all harnessed on November 5th.
We have a
Yeah.
candidate here in Ohio who has made fun of women over 50. He's for our state, or I mean, our United States Senate. He doesn't think that we should be interested or invested in that issue. And so, but someone we had on not too long ago said that this is the most fundamental decision that we make in our lives. When are we going to be a parent?
Mhm.
And so those words just really worked for me. And so reiterating that for the crowd.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you said about it being an economic issue, because I think way too many people, and I'm sure you've maybe had this conversation with others, but they'd be like, oh, you're either really care about abortion, but you really should care about the economy. And they don't see how those two connect in any way, shape, or form. Jessica, is that the same for you? Is that the top of biggest issue for you, or what's your
Both
focus?
of those, yeah, both of those are gun violence and abortion. But I think the other thing I learned, like I had to, I went through cancer and so did my husband. And the one thing I learned with being your own advocate in like the medical setting was I asked a doctor, well, what would you do if this was you? Or what would you do if this was your daughter? And they often don't want to give that opinion unless you force them to. But what I find is when you're having a discussion about these things on this like this level, right, with somebody, if you were to say, well, what would you do if this was your daughter? Right? If she came to you in this position, like, and I'm just asking, like, what would you do? I remember talking to a woman who was very Christian to the nth degree, and she was saying that she was against gay rights. And then I said, well, what would you do if your son came home and said that? And she paused, and I just think it's those finding those little cracks, and personalizing it. Because even if you're not a woman, then you are somebody who loves a woman or has a woman in their life or a mother or a sister. So I think that the hardest part is not becoming confrontational about it, because if we do that, then everybody shuts down, right? And that's where it can feel the apathy can creep in, where you feel like, well, why would I even start a conversation with somebody who already has their mind made up? I think there are a lot more people though who are just misinformed, right? So when Kamala had to go on, was it Call Her Daddy and say like, here are the not truths, right? Nobody is saying you can get an abortion at 9 months and all of these things. I think that's important too. Because of social media, we're so siloed, right? So they just may not be getting the right information. And maybe you say something and you say it in a kind of way like, what's crazy is I heard this, I don't know. And they go home and Google it and maybe you've changed somebody's mind.
I love that. And I was going to say, I think you guys mentioned on your podcast talking to somebody in a nail salon or so. There was something
Yeah,
about
that
like,
was me.
that was you. Okay, bringing up and just
I regret
starting those
that. I
conversations.
regret it because I didn't say anything because my daughter was there and I got so activated. I thought I was going to lose my mind. But I kind of I should have said something, and I should have done it in my way of like, oh, I know you're looking at me and we're in New Hampshire and I'm white and you think that we are on the same page enough so that you feel comfortable saying these horrible things. But let me try to have a conversation with you. Who knows? Maybe I would have nudged her a little bit. I think you have to know like what state of mind you're in before you enter that conversation. And I obviously was feeling very dysregulated. And I was in front of my daughter. But you know what? I think if we could manage our emotions, I think always better to say something. What's the worst that can happen, right? They're even more convinced. They already were beforehand, right? And
Yep.
how many people does that woman interact with that poke any holes in her theories? She's watching Fox News. She's only with people who think the same thing. So maybe she just hasn't had the opportunity, right, to have that conversation.
That's great. I mean, that's exactly what we talk about here every day. It's just having those conversations, trying, like you said, finding that common ground. And obviously, I think you have to be in the right state of mind because you don't want to make it worse, but you
Yeah.
take opportunities when you can.
And I think the whole thing we talk about with small talk is you do yes and, right? You have to find a common ground before you start to poke holes. So it's like she's saying, well, the economy is this and that, and it's going to hell, and that's why we need change. Okay, I agree. We're all out there struggling, right? It is tough. It's tough. And then she's like, oh, okay, cool. We're on the same page. And then you can go deeper. But what about this, and what about that? But first we have to feel like we're on, we have some connection, I think.
Well, speaking of going deeper, Julie, we talk about the deep dive.
Okay, well, you're
I'm
are
sorry,
you
you know
doing
what?
the training?
I'm sorry. I just realized, I think I sent Julie an old run of show. And so I
Don't
put
worry
her in a
about it. Ask
bad
us
spot because
anything.
she doesn't have the questions I'm talking about. That was a hilarious segue, Julie, but you don't have the questions. So I'm going to ask it.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, that
No.
was bad for me. All right. So we talk a lot, like we talked about, we share personal stories, we find those common ground. And you guys are co-host of a podcast called The Deep Dive, where you share a lot about your personal lives. I think you started talking about sitting on your asses and babies on your tits and that kind of stuff. So that's very personal information. Can you tell us like how you or why you decided to start that podcast and what impact you think sharing all these personal stories about your life has on your audience?
Jess, I'm curious what you'll say, but I think that we were very, we felt like the women in our lives had really saved us many, many times through motherhood, through personal health issues, through death and grief, that it was our community and our tribe of friends who literally saved us and helped us move through the world. And so I think the podcast for me was really started in that spirit of like, oh, none of us know what we're doing and we're all trying to be okay. And there's, especially with Instagram and social media, this sense that other people have it easier, other people's homes look better, their kids are more organized, or whatever it is, right? In whatever sphere, they make more money, they have a better job, and I think through sharing so much of ourselves and hearing from our listeners, what we realized is like everybody is faking it. Everybody is feeling very messy and wanting to, we talked about the antidote to despair, but wanting to ultimately feel togetherness, to feel, that's why I'm so overwhelmed to see everybody here tonight, is that to be together, to not be alone in this feeling of what do I do, to be together through it, and to engage community and to be a part of our community has been really beautiful for us. And we've definitely built such a beautiful community through Deep Dive, but it's really, to me, there's something very powerful about women and how we show up and how we lift each other up. And the women activists that I've seen have done it, and it's very beautiful. And I think that's what we found from the podcast. I can't remember quite why we started it, but I think that's certainly what it evolved into.
I think we thought we were going to be talking a lot more about moisturizer than we do. And we do talk about that, but pretty quickly it became clear that like the more we revealed our vulnerabilities and our personal stories, the more people were connecting with us and sharing their stories back. I think something that's really special about women is we aren't afraid to go, I don't know, can somebody help me? And so we do that within the community. We have lots of challenges, like we're all going to try to do this or that. And so I think that's also nice too, because I bet we're going to have a lot of people that we chat with, women who want to be involved, but don't know how, and I'm one of those women, right? June had to teach me and I had to follow her lead. But I think there's a lot of women who really would like to be doing more or helping, because it's also a chain, right? I say it's like how people found our podcast. We didn't have some splashy like take on the world. We weren't like a podcast about an existing property, although I'd like this to become a podcast about Grace and Frankie personally. That's what I'd like this to transition into. But people tell each other. Women, like, we're like little birds. We like tell each other one thing and then the other one tells the other thing, and suddenly we all know the same thing, right? So I think that that's how we can think about this, is we're sharing little bits of twine, so we can all have a nice nest. And that little piece of information might be something that person doesn't have, and then they can pass it on to the next person. And really, it's like, are you voting? I think, like, the thing I always do is I'll say, when I'm like at the butcher counter, I'll just be like, oh my God, did you see Lil Jon announce Atlanta, Georgia? And they'll say, oh no, I didn't catch that. Oh my God, you got to check it out. Oh, I should. Okay. I go, well, ugh, we got to make sure we vote, right? And it's like, on the way out, you're like, register to vote. We got to get out there, right? Casual, but maybe that person's not registered. I don't know.
Well, you are giving me every perfect segue into like what I need to do next, because we want to finish the Rally Your Squad training, which is getting everybody involved so that they can have those conversations. Because what you just described, Jessica, and everything that you all have been talking about with sharing personal stories is 100% what we need to be doing. Okay, so for those of you, I want to have this conversation about who are we trying to reach with this. So yes, your like-minded friends, the people that you think are all voting, you still need to talk to them, because people, number one, sometimes they lie. So you do need to look, and you can see with using Rally, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more, you can see their voting history and do they actually always show up to vote. The other thing is that you can also make sure they vote down ballot. Okay, some people, they vote the top of the ticket, but they may not know who to vote for school board. I have politically, like I said, active friends today who called me because they didn't know about stuff on their ballot. So I need to have conversations with everybody, even if they agree with me. You have those moderate non-political friends, the people who just really aren't paying attention. They don't know anything about the down ballot races. They may be hearing really misinformation at the top of the ticket. So you need to be having those conversations. Right now, those right-wing believers, if you have MAGA family members or neighbors or people who are down the QAnon rabbit hole, yes, you can love them. Yes, you can try to move them, but not right now. We are in a sprint that takes a marathon. So we need to take our energy and focus it on those people that we can actually persuade. So for the next 30 days, for the next month, we want to have the 2-hour conversations with the persuadable person and not the 2-hour argument with the MAGA uncle. So when you're thinking about who you're going to talk to, you don't have to worry about talking to the MAGA people. You do not have to make that a priority. What we would love for you to do, though, is to become part of this team. And what we're asking is everybody agree. I'm going to reach out to voters. I'm going to think of those 10 to 12 friends that I can have conversations with around voting. Obviously, we'd love for you to have more than that, but get started with like 10 or 12. So start thinking about that list. And for right now, think of a spouse or a best friend or your adult child who can vote. And what I really need you to do is to get out your phone and text Rally to 59868. This is our online platform that will help you be amazing at doing this friend-to-friend outreach. It is a great resource. Not only am I going to tell you a little bit about that, it gets you voter information. So you'll be able to see if your friend actively votes. You'll also see if they've already voted, voting is starting, or if they have that absentee ballot that's just sitting on their kitchen counter and you need to nudge them to get it back. It also is going to give you messaging, scripts, things you can send to them to start those conversations. So scan this QR code, text Rally to 59868, or people from my team are dropping the link in the chat right now. And I'm just going to quickly walk you through what it looks like. When we get to breakouts, we can answer more specific questions, but you're going to create an account. So you just have to sign up with your email. And then when you get into the campaign, you're going to click your state. We have organizers in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina. If you are not in one of the states, then you just click all other states and you join the national campaign. And then you set up your profile just like you do for everything online. You put in your information and then you're going to match yourself to the voter file. If you do not see your name there, click none of these and please go check your voter registration. I've heard some horror stories lately of people being purged. And then it's time to add those people you're going to talk to. Okay, who are those friends I'm going to reach out to? Like I said, start tonight with your significant other, your bestie, whoever it may be. You're going to go to the tasks tab and you'll see that says build your squad. That's your squad you're going to reach out to. Click add contact and you're going to add that friend's name. And it's easy. You're going to add their legal name because it has to be match the voting file. their city, state, and their age range. You're going to notice we're not asking for their email and we're not asking for their phone number. We do not want to contact them. That defeats the entire point of relational organizing. We want you to reach out to them. But we want to match them to the voter file so you can get all of that information that we just shared so that you know when they voted, so you can stop, contacting them and contact those people who are still waiting there. So once you enter their info, the voter file will pop up with everybody who matches them. You're going to click to match them, or none of these if they're not there. And then you definitely need to reach out to them about checking their voter registration. And then there's a key question to answer. And this is just for us to make sure we can target really great actions to this person. So if you rank them as like a 1, like they should be a volunteer, man, they are totally on our side, versus somebody who might need a lot of persuasion. You're just going to say where they fall on that scale. And then we'll make sure we get you actions that are appropriate for that person. And then the last thing, you've got somebody in there, you keep adding those contacts, and then you're going to go in and you're going to see, okay, what can I talk to them about? And you're going to go back onto the tasks tab, and there will be a list of things that we have. There'll be information you can send. We'll give you suggested messaging. You can help them come up with a voter plan. And if they say they want to early vote, it'll pop up for you early vote locations that you can share with them. You can take notes. So this is such a great resource to use. So hopefully now everybody is on, but if you're not, one more chance. Text Rally to 59868 or scan this QR code. I think you have the right first questions. We're going to check Julie's run a show. I think the first question is for Jessica about her book. Do you have that question?
It
Julie?
is. And you've talked about it quite a bit tonight, the art of small talk. What's your best advice for everybody here tonight?
Yeah, let's see. So, I think it's just thinking about what your priority is. So if you want to make sure people are registered, so where I live, most people are Democrats. So I can feel pretty confident that we're on the same page. It's just that, are they going to vote? And I have a suspicion that there's a lot of really busy mothers out there who just will not be able to get their shit together. So one thing I did today at drop off is I said, did you get your ballot in the mail? And they said, one woman said, oh God, I haven't opened my mail in so many days. I guess it's there. And I said, yeah, I always do it because I know I am not going to have my shit together enough to get to the polls. Like, no way. So I'm just going to do that, and she's like, oh, you're right. I'm going to check when I get home. So I feel like that's because I am the kind of woman that is so disorganized. I'll literally forget that it's in there, and then I'll forget that it's the day to go, or I'll wait to the last minute. So I try to sort of lead with my own mess. Like, I just know myself. I've been telling people, because I just know myself, I will completely forget to do it. So that's always a nice way to do it. So then you don't sound like, a lot of people can feel like they're being preached to, by somebody who's politically active, and that will make them feel insecure, and then they'll shut down, and then they'll be like, I don't care. I don't have to vote. Or I'll say something like, I always thought, because I lived in a state that always goes blue, that like, it's not that big a deal. But I guess there's a lot of people on this ballot that have a lot to say, like about this prop or this school board person, because those are the ones I'm unfamiliar with. And I was thinking to myself, I'm just going to probably ask June to give me her list of like who the smaller people are that she's voting for. So I know what, if I don't have time, I at least know where I'm at. And I was actually thinking, is this something that people can text and say, hey, if you guys are open to it, would you like to know who I'm going to go for? If just let me know. I'm not going to like group text that, but honestly, June, if you were to text our group that, I'd be like, oh, thank God you've done the research for me.
You know what is so funny, because I do always post like my local progressive voting guide that I don't make, but I take someone else's who I really, really trust. And then I do post it online. And it is really interesting you say that, Jess, because I'm just thinking now, there are a lot of people who will sporadically text me around this time, because we just received our ballots yesterday, and say like, hey, are you going to post the guide yet? It's not up. But I am like, oh, wow, people do now look to this resource. And so I could just text it out.
Love that.
So
I think a lot of moms are not on, I'm saying moms, I think a lot of women are not even on social media anymore. They're too exhausted and they're too overwhelmed. So great. A text. I do all of my business over text.
Yeah,
So
totally.
Text me.
I think I will definitely do that this year.
And also,
So
yeah. Oh, just one more thing is the way I was doing the Little John thing. I think if something's happened and there's a lot of things happening, right? You can always bring it up in small talk. Like, did you see, like, while you're checking out, or like, oh God, that reminds me of blank. Did you see that? And then you can go from there. Cause that's kind of like what it used to be when we all watched like must-see TV,
Yes.
Like, so now that's happening. Or did you see that crazy thing Trump said? That was wild, right? Actually it's this, then you can kind of clear up some things. Anyway, go ahead, June.
I was just gonna say, I think one thing you do really well, Jess, is also you're just curious about people. And I think when we're talking about having these conversations and rallying and having brave conversations, that genuine curiosity of just what another's experiences is really useful, and taking that shame piece away, or making someone just feel like there's no judgment and genuinely being curious. I think sets the stage for an open conversation.
Right. You can also always share a personal, now listen, sometimes we have a chapter in our book called Lie, which is that a lot of times in our small talk, we might tell little white lies. Like if someone says, oh, I'm from Baltimore, we would say, oh, I can't wait to go to Baltimore, when we've never had that on our bucket list. No offense to anyone from Baltimore here. But I think you can also use stories like, oh, it's funny because a cousin of mine, this happened. You don't actually have to have a cousin who that happened to. Okay. But if it helps, it helps make a point that somebody close to you, this happened to. I had a cousin who unfortunately had this situation and had to get an abortion, and she did, and this is the difficulty she encountered. That to me is a lot more powerful than just I read a stat about blank, and don't be afraid to lie. Suddenly I'm X'd out, and like that's the last you see
I
of
love
me.
using the example. We have so many amazing stories that come across. I love using the fake relative to like share those stories out, but you guys are like a walking, like I don't know, just like perfect example of like relational organizing here. Like Jessica is going to reach out to Diane for like the information that she needs, and you're going to share it to your group
squad.
chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 100% what we want. Everyone on this call doing modeling, please like do all these things. So as we mentioned, Diane, you are also an author, and I love this segue. So we're talking tonight about small talk, having those conversations, finding common ground. Leading with your mess is amazing, by the way, everybody. That's another great way to have those convos. But as you're doing all this work and you are seeing who gets elected to office and maybe not being happy with someone who gets elected to office, you should run for office. And you wrote a book called Represent, the Woman's Guide to Running for Office and Changing the World. So I'd love to know what motivated you to write about this topic, and what advice you have for women on this call tonight who might in the back of their mind being like, I should run.
Well, I loved it that Julie said she was an elected and then two other friends were. I mean, I think that's so amazing and powerful. What inspired me was really just Trump in 2016 and feeling total despair, and actually thinking, I just had my second child and was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, do I want to perform? Do I want to act? Like, how do I protect their future? And I was just considering running for office and making a real pivot. And I realized that I actually had no idea really where to begin, and that it seemed like such an overwhelmingly monumental task. And that actually, I mean, I talked about my own education in civics, but that a lot of people my age, civics is not really taught anymore and didn't quite know how it all worked, and what to do and what to do first. And so I teamed with Kate Black, who at the time was the chief of staff at Emily's List, the biggest fundraising organization for women electeds. And I asked her, and we had a very long conversation, and she actually said the first thing to do is to tell people, which I think ties right back into what we're talking about here. To have people hold you accountable, to say that you're thinking about it, to just say it, and how powerful that is to put voice to it. And a lot of people have said, well, June, you know, you're an actress, you're not going to run. And to that I say, well, I might one day, you know, I might. I don't think it should be seen as something, you know, that's left to others to do, or something that only a select group of people get to do. And that was really the goal behind the book, was that many women, different women, various economic set, all over, racial, all ever, that many different women could potentially see themselves as a candidate and as a representative, that it wasn't better left for others to take on. And specifically what I wanted to tackle was the reality of women's lives, you know, the pay disparity that women suffer from, the you know, invisible labor that women do, and how, you know, to account for it when considering doing something like this. So that was really the motivation was Trump, and feeling so shocked and humiliated and embarrassed, and so many women stepped up after that. That was the real bright side to him. But despair was my motivation. And yeah, I guess the advice I have is to tell people right away. You don't have to, and this is sort of what Jess was saying about being messy too. And even in conversation, you don't have to have it all figured out. You can show up as you are, and there will be people to help you. And you can, you know, men are not waiting to do this. There's a statistic we write about in the book where, and I'm going to butcher it because I don't know it offhand and it is a little bit outdated, but the, you know, percentage of women who felt that they were qualified and wouldn't run was very high in this, you know, data they pulled from. And the number of men who felt they weren't qualified and would consider it was shockingly high. So there is that confidence gap, right? And so I think it's really important for every single woman to consider it. Just consider it. You know, we do a lot of things, and it is also something that we might do.
Well, Julie did it, and I always tell people, if you want to feel super qualified, go sit at your state legislative committee meeting and listen to some very unqualified elected people have conversations. You will walk away feeling you are brilliant and ready to run for office.
Yeah. And also that your experience is your expertise, that it is a part of it.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And as women and as mothers, we are way overqualified.
For so many things. Well, I know that both of you have commitments that you're going to have to get to. So before we let you go, just where, if people want to follow you, keep up with you, where should they do that?
Well, you can always listen to the deep dive. You can get it wherever podcasts are, or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm June Diane on Instagram. And that's where I post most of my stuff.
And I'm at St. Clair Jessica. And if you want to get the Art of Small Talk with Casey Wilson and I, and that might help some of you, you know, get the courage up to have these conversations.
Absolutely. Please check out both of those books. Represent, it's a long title, I'm sorry. Represent, I know it's like running for office and women.
Just Google Represent June. That's it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So thank you both so much for taking the time
for having us.
and being here with us.